Welcome to the Retirement Made Easy podcast. I'm your host, Greg Gonzalez. My goal for the podcast is to help you live a better life in retirement by giving you the tools and information you need in a language that you can understand. The Retirement Made Easy podcast is a weekly podcast that comes out every Thursday. You can check out past episodes at retirementmadeeasypodcast.com. And if you have any questions of your own, there's a Ask Greg a Question at the bottom of the website where you can type in your question and submit it. I always love getting questions from listeners. This week's episode is episode number 16. I've called this episode the number one factor or the number one key to a successful retirement strategy. And yes, there's a lot of factors that go into a successful retirement strategy, but there's one crucial key, the biggest factor for a successful retirement strategy is what we're going to talk about here today. Before we get into today's episode, I wanted to remind listeners to check out our website, which is retirementmadeeasypodcast.com. That's retirementmadeeasypodcast.com. There you can download some of our free resources, such as my retirement secret sauce and our free 2020 tax planning guide. So check out our website, retirementmadeeasypodcast.com. All right, let's jump into today's episode, which I have entitled The Number One Key to a Successful Retirement Strategy. And I wanted to start off with my inspiration for today's episode. I received a call a few weeks ago from a person that seemed to be potentially wanting to interview financial advisors to help with their retirement strategy, with their investments, and so forth. And they asked me a question. They asked me a question that I just can't get off my mind. And the question they asked me was, do all of your clients outperform the S&P 500? Now, for those of you that don't know what the S&P 500 is, the S&P 500 is just a stock market index. It represents roughly 80% of the U.S. stock market. So it's a very common stock market index in the United States. 500 of the largest U.S. companies. So this person was asking a question that assumes that all of the clients that I work with, their main goal, their main objective is outperforming some arbitrary index. And that's just not the case. I've never heard a client come in and say, we're looking to hire an advisor to beat the S&P 500 because that's our primary financial goal. I've never heard my aunt say at Thanksgiving dinner, man, my life would be better if my financial goal, my leading financial goal of beating the S&P 500 index every year would come to fruition. So this person was asking me a question based on their history of working with a stockbroker. And this stockbroker, from my understanding, had declared to all of his clients that his specialty, he had an expertise of picking stocks that would essentially outperform the S&P 500 over a certain amount of time. And that was his value. In fact, in his eyes, that's the primary reason why someone would work with a stockbroker like him. But the fact of the matter is that outperforming the S&P 500 is not a financial goal. But the number one factor, the number one key to a successful retirement strategy is being very clear about what your financial goals are that you want to accomplish. So in other words, if you don't know what a successful retirement looks like, how will you ever know how to gauge your success if you don't clarify those goals? And for a lot of my clients, for example, a lot of them have the same financial goals. They want to educate their kids, they want to pay their taxes, and they want to retire comfortably. And most people want to leave a meaningful legacy. That's what they want. I've never had a client come to me and say, I want to beat the S&P 500 index because that's my sole financial goal. Greg, we're going to hire you to help us accomplish that goal. That's not what they want. If you ask 100 65-year-olds, what are your retirement goals? I would guess that none of them would say, I want my investments to beat the S&P 500 index. But what I would guess is that some people might say things that are meaningful to them and their life. Maybe it's, I want to leave a legacy. I want to make sure my kids are taken care of when all is said and done. I want to make sure our money lasts as long as we do. And I want to make sure that we can maintain our lifestyle, a comfortable lifestyle in retirement. And if possible, I want to help pay for my grandkids' college education. So when you're working with your financial planner, all of the planning that you do with him or her should seek to maximize the probability of accomplishing the goals that you set forth. And it is so crucial that you write those goals down with pen and paper. Brian Tracy, who's one of my favorite authors, he did some research on this, and that just the act of writing your goals down increases the likelihood that you'll accomplish those goals tenfold, just by writing them down. There was a study that was done years and years ago that tracked Harvard MBA graduates. So if you graduated from Harvard, you're probably a very bright person. But they looked at these Harvard graduates. Not only did they graduate from Harvard, but they all had an MBA from Harvard. And they looked at all these graduate students and they asked them, do you write your goals down? Do you look at them frequently? Or have you even thought about your goals? And the results were absolutely fascinating. 84% of the Harvard MBA graduates had no written goals at all. 13% of these Harvard MBA graduates had written goals, but no concrete plans. And 3% of the Harvard MBA graduates had both written goals, concrete plans, and they looked at the goals every single day. And 10 years later, the 3% of the Harvard MBA graduates that had written their goals down and looked at them every day were making 10 times more than the other 97% of the class. So what does that tell us? Write your goals down. If you want to accomplish your goals, write them down. Writing down your financial goals is the number one key to a successful retirement strategy, and I don't care what anybody tells you. It's not finding the lowest cost portfolio. It's not minimizing taxes. It's not having the greatest investment portfolio or setting up the most well thought out trust. It's having written financial goals that are clear and, more importantly, they are meaningful to you. There was a story I heard about a winter Olympic athlete, and he was training with other athletes, and they had trainers there, and they had a development coach that spoke to all the athletes. And this coach asked the athletes, how many of you athletes here have goals? And all of the athletes raised their hands. He said, how many of you athletes have written your goals down? About 85% of those athletes raised their hands. He said, next, how many of you have those written goals with you here today? 2 of the athletes raised their hands. And wouldn't you know, those 2 athletes that raised their hands ended up being medalists in the next Olympics. So let's talk about what your retirement goals might look like. What retirement goals should you be writing down on a piece of paper? Well, the first thing you might write down is the age at which you want to retire. Whatever your retirement goal is. Maybe that's age 65, which a lot of people want to retire at 65, so they're eligible for Medicare. That might be goal number 1. Goal number 2 might be that you want to retire comfortably. In other words, you want to retire and have a paid off house, and you want to be able to live on X amount of dollars per month, however you define comfortably. For me personally, retiring comfortably would mean that I would be able to continue living the same lifestyle I had grown accustomed to living while I was working. Next, you might have a goal, which is very common among retirees, that they want to have a paid off house in 2020, or maybe it's 2022, a paid off house by a certain date. That's a very common goal for a lot of people. Because if you can go into retirement with a paid off house, you won't have that mortgage payment, and so you'll be able to live on less money than if you still had that mortgage. For me personally, a goal might be that I want to help fund my grandkids' college education. Maybe that's meaningful to you. It is very meaningful to me because I came out of college with a ton of student loan debt, and I didn't get those loans paid off until I was 30 years old. Education is one of those things that you can help with, and if you helped a grandkid with their college education, that's a degree that no one will ever be able to take away from them. And it really enhances their overall earnings, their overall lifetime earnings, by having that college degree. So helping grandkids out with their college education, that might be something that's meaningful to you. You may not have grandkids, but that's an example of a goal that you might have. Another goal might be that you want to do some traveling during retirement, and traveling can be expensive. So you really need to be specific about the traveling that you want to do and how much you're going to budget for it every year. Are you talking about a vacation to Europe or a vacation to a state park and then simply going camping shortly thereafter? Are you talking about fishing trips to the local lake, or are you talking about fishing trips to Canada or to South America? The vacation or the traveling that you do may end up being very expensive or not as expensive, depending on how you budget these trips. You might have a goal of starting a business. Maybe it's a small restaurant. Maybe it's a nursery that you want to start. But a lot of retirees are starting these small businesses that they had always dreamed of during their working life, but they didn't have the time. And now retirement gave them that opportunity. And now maybe your goal is to turn your passion into a small business. So you've got this list of all your financial goals. And really, they're your life goals. They're financial goals, but they're also life goals. And so all the planning that you do with your financial planner and all the decisions that you make should be made with these goals in mind and with the intention of accomplishing these goals in the time frame that you had established. For example, if your target retirement age is age 65, if that's your goal to retire on your 65th birthday, well, you want to make sure all the decisions that you're making leading up to that point are actually enhancing the probability of you being able to retire at age 65, if not sooner. Because it's okay. It's kind of like if you're going across country and you know it's going to take X amount of hours, if you get there a little early, that's okay too. You just don't want to be working until 69 if your goal was age 65. And the hardest part about planning for the future, no matter what it is all the uncertainties. You hear people say, oh, we live in such a crazy world, and there's going to be so many things that pop up. But there's going to be tons of changes between now and your retirement. But you know the one thing that won't change is your goals will not change. People are still going to want to educate their kids, minimize, but pay their taxes, and retire comfortably. That's what they want. No matter who is running for president, no matter if we're at war with Iraq, or if there's a terrorist attack, or if there's a virus, a Zika virus, a swine flu, a bird flu, a coronavirus, there's always going to be something. So things are going to change, events are going to happen, but the one thing that won't change is your goals will not change. So your plan may have to adjust over the years. Just like a pilot when he's flying that plane, he can't just put it on autopilot and it magically gets him there. Instead, he'll have to make slight course adjustments throughout the flight. Maybe he runs into turbulence or higher winds than he was expecting. You can make these adjustments as needed to get back on course. Knowing that the destination is not going to change, it's right there. It's waiting for you. But the current situation, the economy, life will change. Life will always throw you curveballs, but you've just got to adjust accordingly. And that brings up another point. Between now and retirement, the market's going to go up and down. The economy is going to have peaks and valleys. You're going to live through it. There's going to be ups and downs. There always is. But it's the down markets that really throw people off course because they lose focus of their goals. They lose focus for the reason that they're investing to begin with. And that's where people make the big mistakes, is losing focus of their long-term goals when they experience temporary setbacks. It's kind of like, let's go back to the Olympian example. Let's say an Olympian is an Olympic skier and she sprains her ankle. It's a temporary setback. But is she going to stop all of her training? No, she's going to heal up, remain focused on that gold medal. That's what she's shooting for. That's her goal. And whenever she heals up, she'll get through it, continue her training, knowing that her goal at the end of the day is that gold medal. That's what she remains focused on throughout the bad days, the injuries, the tough weather, and really even the pain that athletes experience. I once had a captain of a fishing boat tell me that there's a way to cure seasickness when the waves are going up and down and it's tossing the boat around. This captain of the boat said the way you cure seasickness is by focusing on the horizon. You don't look at the waves. The waves are the current state of the market, the current economy, the ups and downs. He said you don't focus on the waves. You focus your vision on the destination, on the horizon. And that's how you cure seasickness. It's the same thing with your investment, your long-term investing. You want to focus on the destination, the goals that you have, the goals that you wrote down in the beginning. Why are you investing in the first place? What are your retirement dreams and goals? That'll get you through the rough times. And as long as you know that there's going to be setbacks along the way, if you're not surprised by those setbacks, that'll change how you react to them, and you'll stick with your long-term plan. That's some of the best advice I can give anybody. But it's always going to come back to what are your long-term goals, and don't lose sight of those goals. I truly believe there's a reason why those Harvard MBA graduates that looked at their goals every single day, there's a reason why they made 10 times as much as the other 97% of the class who didn't look at their goals. They kept their eyes on the prize and focused on their goals for the future. It's the same thing with retirement planning. We write down our goals and we're not surprised when we accomplish them exactly as we planned. Hey, thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Retirement Made Easy podcast. I'm your host, Greg Gonzalez. I'll want to remind you, check out our website, which is retirementmadeeasypodcast.com. Tune in to our next episode, which will be released next Thursday. And until next time, remember, always dream big. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, please consult your attorney, tax advisor, or financial advisor prior to investing. This is a hypothetical example and is not representative of any specific investment. Your results may vary. All performance referenced is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices mentioned are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. The SmartVestor program is a directory of investment professionals. Neither Dave Ramsey nor SmartVestor are affiliates of St. Louis Retirement Advisors or LPL Financial. There is no guarantee that a diversified portfolio will enhance overall returns or outperform a non-diversified portfolio. Diversification does not protect against market risk. All investing involves risk, including loss of principal. No strategy assures success or protects against loss. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member FINRA, SIPC.